It's reflexible, it's okay. So, in the previous class, we talked about actual growth. For actual growth, it is driven by aggregate demand. But when it comes to potential growth, it is driven by the aggregate supply and all about how best we can use our resources. So for potential growth, it simply means the economy is moving. So you can't say, no, you're wasting your time. You're not doing our way. Yeah. For potential growth, it's simply about how sustainable we are able to use our resources. It is the maximum sustainable non-inflationary rate of output an economy can produce over the medium term, driven by labor force, growth, capacity accumulation, and productivity improvement. There's potential economic growth, or there's potential growth if output is increasing via the use of equipment, machines, workers, productivity are increasing. So if these are happening, it is about the long term than the short term. For actual growth, it's about the short term. But for potential growth, it's about the long term. And that is why when you are representing potential growth, it is about an outward shift in the PPF or a long-run aggregate supply curve. For actual growth, it's about inward, a movement inside the PPF and aggregate demand curve. That is for actual growth, yes? For actual growth, we talked about it previously. It's driven by aggregate demand. The demand for goods and services allows us to produce. That is actual. There's room for improvement, but we are not there yet.
So active growth is now
yeah. So when you are able to use those improvements, you are able to reach your potential. When you are able to explore more, that is potential growth. So that's why potential growth is driven by the labor force, the human capital, the value of your workers within the economy, capital accumulation, how much more are you invested in capital goods, and the last one is productivity, which is output against your input. So these are things that brings about potential growth. So for potential growth, you can represent it with the PPF and the long-run aggregate supply curve. For actual growth, it is aggregate demand curve and PPF, but inside the PPF, movement inside the PPF. But when it comes to potential growth, it means the economy is able to use more of its output efficiently. So to represent potential growth using your PPF, it should be an outward shift in your PPF. Inward, in between from X to Y, inward is actual. But outside the PPF is potential. It means you are able to use resources, fully use your resources. For actual growth, all resources are not employed. For actual growth, it means you are moving in between here. Or they are unused resources, unemployed resources. But when it comes to your potential growth, it means your resources are fully employed. Actual, unused resources. Potential, fully used resources. Unemployed, fully employed. So when it comes to potential growth, it means you are fully employed all your resources and you are using them well. So an outward shift in your PPF is as a result of you reaching your potential as an economy. And for your PPF to shift outward, it simply means there is improvement in technology, there is availability of raw materials, there is labor force utilization, and there is capital accumulation. These are the reasons why you have an outward shift in your PPF. So whenever you have an outward shift in your PPF, it simply means potential growth. Movement inside your PPF is actual growth. Do you get it?
Outside is potential growth.
Movement inside here is actual. But an outward shift in your PPF from PPF 1 to PPF 2 is a potential growth. Same goes to the long-run aggregate supply curve. Your long-run aggregate supply curve represents your potential sustainably, what you can do in the nearest future. So a movement where price is still going to be constant. Movement from LR implies that you are using all your resources. That is potential. There's no unemployed resources. You get the difference here? So to represent your potential growth, you use your long-run aggregate supply curve and PPF. An outward shift in the PPF represents potential growth. A rightward shift from LRAS1 to LRAS2 also represents a potential growth. Using fully employed resources. But for your actual growth, they are unemployed resources. Because if resources are fully employed, you won't be operating inside your PPF. Operating inside here, any point here, means unemployed resources. Unemployed resources. But as soon as you get to your frontier, this is your frontier. What will make you to reach your potential is a rightward shift, outward shift from PPF1 to PPF2, potential growth. But whatever you have inside here is actual. They are unemployed resources. Here, you have fully used your resources, you have reached your potential. So the difference between this and this is output gap. Output gap. The difference between your actual growth, your potential growth and actual growth is your output gap. So in the next class, we're going to talk about output gap. Is it clear? Do you have any question? I'm going to repeat again. Potential growth is about capacity utilization. It's about fully using your resources. Yeah, this is your real GDP. Your real GDP. This is your income. This is the price level. The price level stays the same, but your long-term aggregate supply curve has shifted rightward. It simply means you have more resources available to use. So there's no unemployed. There's no unemployed resources here. Unemployed. There's no. All resources are fully utilized. But when it comes to actual growth, there's room for improvement. That's the difference. The difference between actual and potential growth is that for actual growth, it's driven by what we need now, short term. For potential growth, it's driven by the long term. So the difference between the long term and the short term is our output gap. Is it clear?